Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're skipping right past that sunny, utopian story of artificial intelligence you hear everywhere to find the hidden gears actually running the machine. You know, we're so conditioned to picture AI as these brilliant, invisible algorithms seamlessly solving humanity's problems, or maybe as slick, glowing data centers out in Silicon Valley. But the reality? Well, it's far more physical, it's a lot messier, and frankly, it is deeply human.
Just listen to how some industry leaders actually view this tech. They talk about AI like it's this brand new, untouched continent, right? Just packed with billions of digital workers willing to toil away for absolutely free. It's pitched to us as pure magic, this frictionless world where highly intelligent machines do all the heavy lifting. But if we want to truly understand AI, we absolutely have to look at who is actually doing that heavy lifting.
So let's forget the autonomous robots for just a second. From Kenya to Bulgaria, human workers in the global south are being paid an absolute pittance to build the very systems that are supposedly going to replace them. For completing these grueling, mind-numbing daily quotas, many make just $9 a day. $9, which literally forces them to take on second, exhausting jobs just to keep their families fed. And that brings us to the core question of our explainer. We have to challenge this myth that these systems magically run themselves. Because, as researchers point out, the word artificial in AI, it's incredibly deceptive. These supposedly autonomous, hyper-intelligent systems are completely dependent on oceans of manual human labor plus physical resources working furiously behind the scenes.
Just to put the sheer scale of this hidden labor force into perspective, according to a World Bank report, there are up to 430 million invisible data workers globally. I mean, that is a staggering number of people. These aren't just cogs in a machine. They are real humans. We're talking refugees, struggling parents, even prison populations in places like Finland, all sitting at screens, quietly feeding the algorithms the billions of data points they actually need to function.
It's literally a classic Wizard of Oz dynamic. On one side of the curtain, tech giants project this squeaky clean, futuristic image for us. But behind the curtain, the reality is a massive, highly outsourced industry that heavily relies on precarious populations. These companies intentionally target regions where economies are in crisis, knowing full well that people there are desperate enough to accept rock-bottom wages just to survive.
Okay, so how does this exploitation practically build an AI? It basically happens in a three-step dance. First, tech giants outsource massive data sets to the global south. Second, human workers manually identify objects, drawing little boxes around fires, tagging penguins, defining footpaths. And third, the AI models are fed this data so they can mimic it. A driverless car doesn't naturally know what a tree is, right? A human being had to painstakingly teach it.
But the true cost of this labor goes way, way beyond just low wages. There's a severe, completely hidden psychological toll required to build the safety filters that make AI palatable for Western consumers. You see, for an AI chatbot to learn how not to act, it first has to be deliberately exposed to the absolute worst parts of humanity.
Just consider what Kenyan workers encountered while moderating datasets from major AI companies. The content wasn't just, edgy, it was horrific. In fact, 99.99% of the material they reviewed was toxic. Let that sink in. Only a tiny fraction of a percent was safe. This data was scraped from the absolute darkest corners of the internet, and a real human being was forced to sit there and sort through it.
Because AI has to learn what behaviors to avoid, human workers essentially become the digital janitors for the internet's worst garbage. They're reading prompts and watching videos depicting graphic violence, child exploitation, and horrific dark web content. They basically act as human shields, absorbing all this toxicity and flagging keywords, all just so the final AI product you use is polite, sanitized, and friendly.
And the human cost of being that shield is absolutely devastating. Take Phoenix Makira, for example, a former content moderator. She detailed how daily exposure to murder and abuse led to intense nightmares, severe anxiety, and depression. Many of these invisible workers suffer from lasting PTSD. They are literally sacrificing their own mental health so we can enjoy a clean AI experience.
And the exploitation, it doesn't stop with human minds. It actually extends right down to the Earth itself. We are so conditioned to think of the cloud as this fluffy, ethereal thing floating above us. But the cloud isn't a cumulonimbus, guys. It's a windowless concrete warehouse that sounds like a jet engine. It's incredibly heavy, it's made of humming servers, and it requires a staggering extraction of natural resources just to maintain this illusion of seamless magic.
To manufacture the chips and power these massive data centers, the AI industry gobbles up Earth's minerals at an alarming rate. We're talking immense quantities of copper, cobalt, lithium, and rare earth elements just ripped straight from the ground. Add to that the vast amounts of land, the surging electricity demands, and the millions of gallons of fresh water required just to keep those servers from melting down.
Which forces us to pause for a second and ask a really uncomfortable question. Think about the physical and environmental cost of generating just one single prompt: the water, the electricity, the mined minerals. Was your question really that important? We have to weigh the simple, everyday tasks we casually outsource to chatbots against their undeniable contribution to the global climate emergency.
So, how do tech billionaires morally justify this? How do they look at the environmental destruction, the psychological exploitation of workers in the global south, and just keep pushing their foot on the gas? Well, to understand that, we have to understand the philosophy that's actually driving them.
At the very top of the tech sector sits a highly influential, almost science fiction ideology. It's often referred to by the acronym T-SCREAL. It's a cluster of philosophies, things like transhumanism and long-termism, that focus on radically re-engineering humanity. Their ultimate dream? Colonizing the accessible universe with immortal post-humans. Their priority isn't today's problems, it's a multi-galactic civilization thousands of years from now.
To reach that sci-fi future, their holy grail is AGI, or Artificial General Intelligence. This is a hypothetical system that would equal or exceed human capabilities in absolutely every cognitive domain. Tech leaders believe that if they can just build AGI, they can hand over the creation of their utopian future to this superintelligence. For them, building AGI is literally the single most important task in human history.
And that belief leads to a truly terrifying justification. Proponents of these long-termist ideologies argue that current suffering is basically insignificant compared to the glorious future they're building. As sources highlight, some tech elites view the psychological trauma of data workers and the degradation of our Earth as just a molecule in a drop in the ocean. To them, it's a necessary, temporary sacrifice for their technological paradise.
And to speed toward this AGI future, leading companies are leveraging unprecedented corporate power. Sources note they fiercely prevent unionization, often terminating workers who try to organize, and they silence their outsourced labor with incredibly strict non-disclosure agreements. Furthermore, massive investments in political campaigns, like Elon Musk's financial backing of Donald Trump, are pointed to by critics as efforts to secure a political environment that's favorable to massive, unregulated growth.
Ultimately, we have to take a hard look at the true price tag of artificial intelligence. We have to weigh the grand cosmic promises of these self-proclaimed visionaries against the stark, grueling reality of the actual people doing the heavy lifting in the shadows. Tech leaders constantly assure us that optimizing these resources and humans will be miraculously positive for our civilization. They look at the overarching trend and proudly declare it a huge win for humanity. But as we've seen throughout this explainer, this technological paradise is built firmly on a foundation of unseen suffering, psychological trauma, and massive environmental extraction.
So, after witnessing the shattered lives and depleted environments left in its wake, we're left with one final, deeply urgent question. Once the workers of the Global South have been exploited, the Earth has been fully mined, and the atmosphere heated, who will be the next sacrifice fed into the belly of AI? Thanks for watching this explainer. Keep questioning the narrative, and I'll catch you next time.